The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
If not Ashton Jeanty at number 6 for the Raiders, then who?
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
I had 4 questions that I prioritized on Friday going into the press conference with GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll that I wanted to make sure got answered and got asked, as a matter of fact, either by me or others. And normally that's how it goes. You have a little bit of a game plan and you kind of see how it goes. And so all 4 of the questions that I wanted to get answered were answered for the most part. Not necessarily 100% exactly the way I was hoping it was going to play out, but for the most part, they did get answered. So off top, the first one was about Colton Miller and his contract situation. My exact wording on it on Friday was, how do you place a value on a vet like Colton Miller that you haven't had a lot of familiarity with? How you decide his value to the team, or does that have to go into kind of like showing his worth and almost a prove it type situation? Well, Tashawn asked the Colton Miller question. Tashawn Reed from The Athletic asked the Colton Miller question, but he asked it specifically when it came to him not being there for the voluntary part of the workout. And so GM John Spytek was kind of let off the hook by the way that the question was asked. So he just gave the basic, not going to discuss contracts with any of our players. So here's that answer from GM John Spytek.
I was just going to give you our answer, and it's going to be this going forward. We're not going to discuss contracts publicly, and this is certainly a voluntary part of the offseason program. So, guys are free to come and go as they please.
So that was the answer, short, quick, company line, not going to speak about players' contracts with the media, which makes a lot of sense. And then there were so many people there at the press conference that was the moment where I kind of wanted to follow up and say, well, with the veterans, how do you judge their worth? But then a couple questions went by and, a couple other people jumped in real quick. And that's kind of how it is. It's one of those free-for-alls where you jump in here, you jump in there. And so didn't get the opportunity to really follow up on that. That was one that I feel like was kind of an opportunity missed. But good on Tashawn to ask, straight up about Colton Miller, just because, again, that is something that could impact the draft coming up starting on Thursday. So that was the first question, and that was really the one that didn't get answered 100%. The rest of the questions that I at least wanted to know definitely did get answered the way I thought they would. And matter of fact, the next one was, how would you summarize this year's draft class? Like, is there a theme or not? And I believe that Hondo Carpenter is the one who asked this question and really got a good answer from GM John Spytek.
There's a lot of really good players. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get into the depth of each of our position groups on the board. People are going to start breaking that down and think that we have a tell. I think, we just came from the draft room, actually, and the way that it looks right now, we're excited about the players at a lot of different positions. And I think the cool thing is they match up with some of where Coach and I think that this team can get better. And that makes us feel good because it feels like we can get good players across the board that are going to help our team this year and then years to come as well.
A lot of really good players, right? And it's funny, when he said that, I kind of smiled, and I don't think he could see me smile because, well, just again, the way that the room is, the shape of the room, there's so many people in there that there's a lot of people in front. Matter of fact, a lot of times throughout the course of the press conference, I kept sliding to the left, sliding to the right, because I kind of sit behind Hondo to an angle, and I was trying to get out of the view of his head so they could see me, especially when I go to ask a question, so you can make the eye contact. But yeah, a lot of good players. Sounds like stars or starters, not stars, right? Which has kind of been the theme that we've been talking about. Something Daniel Jeremiah said on one of his pre-draft conference calls way back early in this process of the draft. So I felt like that was the same theme that you heard John Spytek speak about. Lots of really good players. So again, nothing that stands out as far as a ton of game changers, but starters, right? Starters are in the draft, and that's what you have to build your team with, is a bunch of starters. This is a really good draft for, I think, foundational players, foundational pieces to your team. Now, there are obviously some guys that are stars, and there's some guys that we don't know that are going to be stars, right? Just similar to even Max Crosby being drafted in the 4th round. Nobody knew he was going to be a star. He is, right? But you thought that, hey, this guy could be a quality player if he does this, that, and the third. Bulk up a little bit. Well, he ended up bulking up, and he ended up showing out, right? So he is an absolute star. So there'll be stars that come from this draft. There's just not a whole lot of initial ones that you're looking at at this stage of the game. Then the first question that I got to ask was about Geno Smith and the quarterback situation. And it's funny because Pete Carroll had fun with this one. He had fun after I asked it, and then he mentioned it like multiple times, or he mentioned me multiple times throughout the press conference. Hey, let's go back to Q's question. And then even when he was walking out of the press conference, he said, Q, you just want to know the pick. And I was like, hey, coach, you're guaranteed to miss a shot that you don't take. But here's the question and the answer about the quarterback situation for the Raiders as it pertains to the draft.
Q Myers, Raider Nation Radio 920. With the addition of Geno and the extension of Follow, how do you approach the quarterback position as it pertains to the draft?
Remain open-minded, and anybody that can help us at that position in particular is going to be, up for consideration. You guys have all done your investigative journalism well enough to know that we've brought some quarterbacks in, and that wasn't by accident by any means. And we remain open to the most important position in sports to get right. And we're super excited to have Geno here, and we continue to expect him to be here for a while, but you can't have too many of those guys.
John Spytek right there, most important position in football, right? They brought in a lot of guys. That was intentional. So to me, that let it be known that they're definitely going to be getting a quarterback in this draft. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to get one early, but they're going to be getting a quarterback in this draft. At least they plan on getting a quarterback. Obviously, there's 31 other teams that have something to say about it, right? So they can affect what the Raiders do with that position. But it, to me, feels very intentional that they're going to get a quarterback at some stage of the game, and you can hear Spytek's answer. So as much as it might seem like even a silly question, just because Geno Smith is there and the contract extension, which is why I specified that, I still thought it was a very worthy question, and you got a lot out of it. Matter of fact, NFL Network ran with that question a little bit later on, in the day on Friday, and Steve Weiss, who I have a lot of respect for, has been covering the NFL for a very long time. He actually was on the Insider Show on NFL Network and was responding to what you heard John Spytek just mention about the quarterback position and had his own thoughts as well. Here it is. Check it out.
They've got 9 overall picks, and to me, they made it abundantly clear a quarterback will be used or used in some way to acquire a quarterback, even if it's used as trade bait to get a veteran quarterback in there. Let's not forget what Pete Carroll did when he first got to Seattle in 2012. They spent, at the time, $36 million on a 3-year deal to get veteran Matt Flynn to be their starter. What happens? They draft Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. Oh, and guess who beat out Matt Flynn to be the starter? So Pete Carroll, we talk about the competitive spirit. This is what he's all about. So again, I think they're going to have a quarterback in there, and not just a training camp arm, somebody who can come in and give Geno Smith a run for his money, even though Geno Smith is their guy. Another position that they didn't shut it down, and we heard right there, is running back. We know Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State, if he is there at 6, could be somebody who's highly appealing to them. We know Pete Carroll wants to run the football. He will draft a running back in the 1st round. We saw him do that with Seattle. We saw at USC, he had star running back after star running back. So that is a core type of player. We'll see later in the draft, offensive tackle. We know Colton Miller's having some contract discussions. They got a lot of ways that they can go, but you heard some slight things in there with Spytek talking about, hey, we value skilled players. We don't undervalue running backs, the quarterback. They got a lot of ways they can go, but I think those 2 valuable spots on offense will be fairly high on the Raiders' priority list.
Steve Weiss right there from NFL Network, again on the Insider Show. He's been on my radio show plenty of times. Great dude. But again, you hear him talking about the quarterback and running back in particular. And of course, we'll talk about the running backs coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. But yeah, I mean, you heard from him, right? He feels like they're very intentional when it comes to the quarterback position as well. So again, I believe fully that out of the 9 draft picks that they currently have, and that could change obviously during the draft, they could trade up, they could trade back, collect a couple extra ones, whatever the case may be. I definitely believe they'll come out of this draft with a quarterback. That could be early, that could be late, but not going to ignore the most important position in football. That's probably the biggest key there from GM John Spytek. And the final soundbite that I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, just again going over the 4 questions that I wanted to make sure to get asked on Friday's press conference with the GM and the head coach was, well, another question that I asked, and that was just about how do you feel? Is there a certain gut feeling to, hey, that was a successful draft, even though we don't know, what the results are for a couple seasons? So here's my question and their response.
I know it takes a couple of seasons to actually know the grade on a draft class, but is there a sense that you can get when the draft is over? If, yeah, feels like we did a really good job. We did and accomplished what we wanted to get accomplished.
Yeah, I think certainly that's the case. You know, you can feel like we have thoughts right now that things we'd like to get done, and if those things go bang, 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 and we're feeling really good about it, we're gonna be happy with the process. But then the proof is in the over time, and so we recognize that. But we'll be celebrating, when this happens, and be excited about it. Because of the process is such a challenge, and it's so much fun for us too, and all of the people involved. We'll enjoy the heck out of it, and then we'll see what happens, and we'll try to make it come to life and be really strong.
There's usually 32 teams that feel really good about their draft after it, but when we get the right kind of people in here, I think you can feel pretty confident you did a good job, and so we're shooting for that this year.
Yeah.
So it's funny. The first question I asked, Pete Carroll got a little bit of a laugh out of it, and then in that question, GM John Spytek got a little bit of a laugh. You heard what he said at the end. There'll be 32 teams that feel good about the draft, and that's true. As I'm going through the mock draft that on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Radio Nation Radio 920, it's so funny. Every time someone makes a pick, I'm like, man, that's a really good pick. But we all know that there's not going to be 32 really good picks in the first round, right? We know that. There's going to be some picks that are going to look good on the surface, and then they're not going to be good. But everyone feels good, for the most part, about their draft class right afterwards. But I did like what Pete Carroll said. Like, Pete Carroll's like, yeah, we go in there and we do the things that we want to get done. We have a checklist of things we'd like to get done. If we feel like we went through the process correctly, we'll feel good about it. And then obviously the proof will be in the pudding once the players get out there on the field and they show their worth. But again, I like how Spytek took my first question and had a really good answer, and then Pete Carroll laughed, and then John Spytek laughed at the second question, and Pete Carroll had a really good answer. So there you go. I just think it's, like I said, it's very worthy questions, and just something that I definitely wanted to make sure that got asked on Friday. And it was a really good press conference overall, about 25, almost 30 minutes in length. And it was the first time that we've got to talk to them since, well, together, at least in that kind of setting, since the combine. I didn't go to the owners' meetings, but I know that there was another opportunity. But these guys haven't been made accessible too much. So to be able to catch up with them, I thought for a few minutes was really good on Friday. Obviously, throughout the course of the year, as they start to, put together not training camp, but mandatory mini camp and OTAs, will have other opportunities. But that was a really good setting. And obviously, we'll have another one coming up after the draft, Thursday, Friday night, and then Saturday night as well. So I'll probably be at the one on Saturday as I'll be getting back in town. Matter of fact, I'm recording this podcast on Sunday. I'm going to be flying out to Green Bay this afternoon, as a matter of fact. So you know how my flight travels are sometimes. And so I wanted to make sure to knock out the podcast in advance. So again, this is being recorded on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, getting ready to head over to the airport and take off for the draft. So I'll be back in town coming up on Saturday, and of course be able to go to the Intermountain Health Performance Center as the GM and the head coach. They kind of give a full recap of the draft in the books.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Betting on Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe's upside might be the best way for the New Orleans Saints to invest in a quarterback after round 2.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast.
I believe that if the New Orleans Saints decide that they want to take a shot at a quarterback at some point in this year's draft that's not at number 9 overall in the first round or number 40 overall in the second round, if he's still on the board, Jalen Milroe of Alabama is absolutely worth the investment of a 3rd round pick or later for the New Orleans Saints. Now, we'll have to see if Jalen Milroe even makes it that far, because I think several NFL teams like what they could potentially get out of Jalen Milroe, which is at its peak another Lamar Jackson style, Lamar Jackson type player in the NFL. Dynamic speed, dynamic acceleration, dynamic play style, incredible acceleration, I should say. Elite player with the ball in his hands as a rusher, but raw and needs development when it comes to being a passer. Now, he did take a step back in 2024 in his new offensive system. Back in 2023, he had a little bit of a better year that year. We'll take a look at some of his numbers. But look, just from the bottom line, and I know that not a lot of people agree with this, that's okay. But just from the bottom line, like if the draft investment makes sense from a pick standpoint, that's why I go all the way to the third round on this. He's Dane Brugler's number 73 player. He's got a draft grade of a second or third round pick. So if something happens and he makes it all the way to the third round, just like we saw back in that 2022 draft class, a bunch of those guys that were expected to be potential first rounders falling all the way to the third and second rounds. If the New Orleans Saints use pick number 9 on a big time impact player, use pick number 40 on a big time starter, potential impact player, and then maybe invest pick number 71 in Jalen Milroe if he is on the board at that time and if he is the best player available, I think it's a worthwhile investment. Let me explain why. The New Orleans Saints have a coaching staff that's built to develop quarterbacks. We've been over this before. Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, as well as Scott Tolzien, head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, respectively, all former NFL quarterbacks. Were they super successful NFL quarterbacks? No. But were they NFL quarterbacks? Yes. Typically, when you build a coaching staff that has that, then you end up finding a coaching staff that is intent upon developing a young passer. Now, that young passer may very well be Spencer Rattler, the New Orleans Saints second-year quarterback that's going into this year and could potentially be the starter going into the season, depending upon what the truth is and what the future is for Derek Carr. But if the New Orleans Saints decide they want to invest a draft pick in this year's draft class, they might as well. And they have the coaching staff to be able to do that. Now, I personally think that the Saints are a little bit more in on guys like Jackson Dart from Ole Miss and Louisville's Tyler Shough. But I think that when it comes to a guy like Jalen Milroe, he's somebody that, for me, makes sense. He finished 2024 with just 2,844 passing yards, 10 passing yards more than he had back in 2023. And here's one of the other things, though. An efficiency rating of 148.8. So college uses a different kind of quarterback rate than what the NFL passer rating is. 100 is basically the average. If you're above that, you're above average. If you're into 200, it's kind of the max at that point. And so last year in 2024, 148.8. So in that sort of above average area, even in a year where, he threw 11 interceptions, only 16 passing touchdowns, new offensive system, all those other things, definitely worth consideration when it comes to that. 2023 threw 23 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, something that no one seems to ever talk about. 172.2 efficiency rating. And a lot of folks draw the line between Jackson Dart and Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles, who, of course, Kellen Moore just won a Super Bowl with as his quarterback with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. That both of them 6'1", 6'2", 222, 223 pounds, have similar grade ratings and all these other things. We discussed this over at the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, which you can find over on WWL and WWL TV Plus if you'd like to see it. And the fact of the matter, though, is that a guy like Jalen Milroe isn't far off from Jalen Hurts either. 6'1", 6'2", 217 pounds, 222 pounds, about 5 pounds difference. Prospect grade 6.14 versus 6.14. Like, these guys are effectively pretty similar, but a more dynamic runner, I would say Jalen Milroe is, and a more polished passer, I would say Jalen Hurts was coming into the NFL, and then he's become more polished as a passer. I feel like if you get a guy like Jalen Milroe, then you end up getting, at the worst case scenario, one of the most dynamic athletes in the NFL. It's not a bad way to be, right? There's a potential for a position change. There's a potential to have him do more things. There's a potential to utilize him as a change of pace quarterback, much like you've seen this team do with Taysom Hill back in the day. Now, here's the truth. I don't know if Kellen Moore plans to use the Taysom Hill game plan in the way that Sean Payton did, in the way that Pete Carmichael did, in the way that Clint Kubiak found a lot of success last year. But if he intends to keep that in his playbook, then having a guy like Jalen Milroe to develop as a quarterback, and then if that doesn't work out, still have one of the most dynamic athletes in the game of football on your team, that would be a pretty good player to turn to in that situation. You look at Jalen Milroe's rushing stats from 2024, you're going to see 168 rushing attempts on his ledger. Remember that the college football counts sacks as well. And they also count sacks for negative yardage. 726 rushing yards is what you'll find on his ledger. But the actual scramble yards, which were 200 rushing yards, and designed rushing yards, which were 679 rushing yards, 879 rushing yards for this guy last year. I mean, that is just remarkable, and added 20 rushing touchdowns in the process. And so if you have a quarterback development team that's ready to develop a quarterback, and you want to get just the most raw talent that's available, intriguing talent that's available, Jalen Milroe might be your guy. Now, we'll see what happens, right? Jalen Milroe could go early. Jalen Milroe could end up with the Denver Broncos for all we know. Like, there's so much that could happen there. But if the Saints wanted to roll the dice on a quarterback after the top guys are off the board, after round 2, I feel like Jalen Milroe would not be a bad shot to take, because at the very, very least, you end up with one of the game's most dynamic athletes right away. And that's exactly who Jalen Milroe would be at his absolute worst.
The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From 3-pointers to steals to assists, there are so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
NFL Draft Week is here.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast.
We did a refresher on Cam Ward's profile, height, weight, play style, strengths, weaknesses, all of that stuff. But now it's about, what do you do to support Cam Ward? And again, it's all about taking a wide receiver for me, but I get to pick number 35, and there are so many options on the board. At wide receiver, you have Jaden Higgins, you have Kyle Williams, you have Jack Best, you have Jalen Royals, you have Jalen Noel, you have Trey Harris. There's a ton of options. Now, no Luther Burden, no Emeka Egbuka. Those guys didn't fall. And in reality, when we get to the draft, those guys likely won't fall. But outside of wide receiver, Donovan Jackson was on the board. I've called Donovan Jackson a can't pass prospect. I don't know if the Titans feel that way, though. So, again, I'm trying to be realistic with this mock draft. Of course, I would love Cam Ward at 1, Ashton Jeanty in the 2nd, Tetaroa McMillan in the 3rd, but let's be realistic here about what could happen. So, Donovan Jackson on the D-line, Derek Harmon was still there. Really considered that. Darius Alexander on the defensive line. At edge, Nick Scourton, Landon Jackson, Braden Swinson, Princely Umami Ellen. There were a lot of, with so many great options on the board, the best thing to do is to trade down. And that's exactly what I did. And again, this is the most realistic trade down that I've seen for the Titans. It's with the New Orleans Saints. The Saints did not take quarterback at number 9. So at pick 40, the Saints are looking. Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart are still on the board. The Saints say, we can't wait any longer. We got to go up and get our guy at 35. So the Saints go up from 40 to 35. The Titans send pick 35 and pick 141 to the Saints for pick 40 and pick 71. Again, last year, there was a trade 35 and 168 for 43 and 79. So there's absolutely precedent for this happening. The Saints have pick 93, pick 112, pick 131. They have 3 more picks after that in the 7th round. The Saints have all the draft picks they could want. So they can afford to give up their extra 3rd round pick that they got from Washington and move up 5 spots and get Jackson Dart, who fits perfectly with what Kellen Moore wants to do on offense. So the Saints come up to get Jackson Dart. The Titans drop back to 40 and pick up pick number 71 while losing pick number 141. So the Titans drop back to pick 40. And in the process, Donovan Jackson, Derek Harmon, and Nick Scourton come off the board out of the guys that we talked about before. Well, that means that I still have my pick of wide receivers. And if I have Jaden Higgins, Jack Best, Jalen Royals, Jalen Noel, Kyle Williams, and Trey Harris, my pick is Kyle Williams. So that's where I go. Pick number 40 after a trade back. The Tennessee Titans take Kyle Williams, the wide receiver out of Washington State. He's everybody's favorite wide receiver now. 22 and a half years old, 5'10", 190 pounds, is on the smaller side, but his release at the line of scrimmage, when I talk about release at the line of scrimmage, I talk about beating press coverage. And the reality is, guys come out of college without experience beating press coverage. And not a lot of college programs press because of the speed at the college level. It's just hard to win physical battles like that at college. There's so much speed, all right? So you don't see a ton of press in college. So a guy that can come into the NFL and immediately have multiple release packages. There are plenty of different release packages, and Kyle Williams can do just about all of them. So getting off press is key at the NFL level, and Kyle Williams is maybe the best in the entire class at getting away from press. He has great straight line speed. He's a yards after the catch demon. He forces a ton of missed tackles. He's actually been good in contested catch situations despite being 5'10", 190 pounds. And, of course, again, the Cam Ward connection. Cam Ward played a year with Kyle Williams at Washington State. They had a connection together, and Cam Ward said when he was doing all those Fortnite streams last week, Kyle Williams on the outside with Calvin Ridley and Xavier Restrepo. Let's go, man. So getting that connection back together and kind of hitting the ground running, I think that makes this pick more valuable than what it would be if the Titans just had Will Levis again at quarterback. Taking Kyle Williams is great, but having Cam Ward at quarterback and pairing him back with Kyle Williams, a guy he knows, that increases the value of the pick. And that's why I'm okay with taking Kyle Williams at pick number 40, despite the size. The size is a concern. 5'10", 190 pounds. Like, that's a smaller wide receiver, and you already have Calvin Ridley as a Z wide receiver. You got Kyle Williams. He's going to play in the slot. You're going to move Calvin Ridley to the slot more. Like, that's not a huge problem, but he's a very versatile player. He can play different spots. He played all three different spots, X, Z, slot at Washington, but I don't think he can play X at the NFL level. He's just too small. The size is a problem. He's better in contested catches. He's good for his size in contested situations. But at the catch point, he doesn't have super long arms. He doesn't have super big hands. Again, he's only 190 pounds. This isn't going to be a guy who is mossing people all over the field. Like, you're just not going to get that. And he's fast. Don't get me wrong. He is fast. But he doesn't have elite explosion out of his breaks, change of direction, stuff like that. Like, we aren't talking about a Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy level flyer here. He's fast, don't get me wrong, but it's just not elite level explosion. So that's what you take when you get Kyle Williams. But in the second round, he should be able to immediately come in and I think 700, 800 yard receiving season. I think he could be that good early on for Cam Ward with the connection that they have and the opportunities that he would likely get in the Tennessee Titans offense with the lack of wide receiver talent. But after Kyle Williams, we move to our third round pick. And remember, we traded back from 35 to 40. We picked up pick number 71. Now, I think what the Titans could do here is they could consider another trade back, but that's not the route that I went because I got worried. So here were my options. On the offensive line, which I think it's time to think offensive line here. Ariante Ursery, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. Tate Ratledge, the guard out of Georgia. Wyatt Milam, the guard out of West Virginia, who you guys know I love Wyatt Milam. I love Wyatt Milam. Those were all there. On the D-line, Vernon Broughton out of Texas. Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, who the Tennessee Titans had a visit with. Pass rusher, interior defensive lineman out of Tennessee, Omar Norman Lott. Really thought about it. But then I go to edge. And Femi Oladejo is there out of UCLA. And you guys know I love Femi. You got Ashton Gillette out of Louisville. You got Savion Jones out of LSU. You guys know I like a lot. Huge, big monster edge, which is what I think the Titans are looking for. But in my mind, when I looked at the edge rushers there was a big drop-off after Femi. Femi Oladejo, after Femi Oladejo, the drop-off to edges, these are all day 3 guys. I wouldn't take any of these guys on day 2. They're day 3 options. The only day 2 edge rusher, in my opinion, that remained on the board is Femi Oladejo, and I can't pass on the opportunity. So I go up there, pick number 71 in the third round, and I take Femi Oladejo, edge rusher, LSU. or LSU, UCLA. 6'3", 260 pounds. All right, think Draymond Jones size. I think this is the minimum threshold for what the Titans want on the edge now. All right. And Femi is only 21.6 years old. So he's not even 22 yet. He could gain another 10 to 15 pounds of muscle and be that 6'3" and some change, 270-pound edge that the Tennessee Titans want. He is an explosive rusher, explosive athlete, jump off the line of scrimmage, power in his hands, pop, great length too, 33.8-inch arms. That's what the Titans want. Explosive athlete with great size and long arms. Physical in the run. He will set the edge. He could shoot a gap. He has great pop in his hands. He'll jar somebody, shed a block. Because he was an off-ball linebacker for his first 2 years of college, he is good in zone. He can drop in coverage. He is comfortable doing that, which, again, the Titans run zone blitzes with Denard Wilson at defensive coordinator, having an edge that is comfortable dropping back into a zone when the other side is blitzing. That's critical for me. I love that versatility. So if you give me explosiveness, you give me length, you give me size, you give me physicality and run defense, you give me the ability to shoot gaps and to drop back in coverage. What are we discussing here? This is a slam dunk at pick number 7. If the Titans leave the top 100 picks with Cam Ward, Kyle Williams, and Femi Oladipo, that is disgusting. What an incredible haul that would be. And look, Femi Oladipo has only been an edge rusher for one season, and he still kind of went back and forth. Some people could look at that and say, oh, he doesn't have experience as an edge rusher. That hurts him. I look at that and say he has incredible upside. Femi Oladipo is not the best version of himself already. He has not peaked as a football player yet. And I love that coming out of college. So because he hasn't been an edge rusher super long, he's got to refine his game. He's got to hone his technique. He's got to have a better plan when he goes to pass rush. He's got to get bigger and stronger too. I think that's important. But what you're working with already, sign me up. So that's my first 3 picks in the draft: Cam Ward, Kyle Williams, and Femi Oladipo. Now we're going to get to day 3 in the draft, where I really think I get some solid value.